Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to unpack the totally wild, highly complex machine learning architecture behind the social media feeds you and I scroll through literally every single day. I mean, you know that feeling, right? You open up an app and bam! Almost instantly, there's this perfectly curated list of posts, videos, and articles just waiting for you. It feels incredibly seamless. Honestly, it kind of feels like magic. But let me tell you, the contrast between that effortless user experience and the monumental, heavy-lifting engineering going on under the hood, it is just staggering. So today, we are going to look at the exact system design actually drawing from the architectural blueprints of giant platforms like Meta, LinkedIn, and X.
It's so easy to just assume it's, a simple chronological list of what your friends are up to. But when you open one of these apps, a massive multi-objective gauntlet is run in the literal blink of an eye. I'm talking less than 200 milliseconds. In that tiny fraction of a second, the system has to decide what is going to bring you the absolute most value right now. It's this incredibly high-stakes balancing act between engagement, freshness, and of course, safety.
So here is our roadmap for this explainer. First, decoding meaningful engagement. Second, the blueprint of the feed. Third, sourcing and feature signals. Fourth, the multitask ranker. And finally, number 5, guardrails and system integrity.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Decoding Meaningful Engagement. We absolutely have to start by addressing a massive myth about how these platforms actually measure success. The amateur assumption, and we hear this all the time, is that algorithms just want to harvest your raw time, farm cheap clicks, and provoke outrage. But the mature engineering goal, it's entirely different. System architects at this level are actually optimizing for user value and long-term retention. And why is that? Well, because outrage and clickbait, they just burn users out. Think about it. If an app just feeds you trash, eventually you're going to close it and never come back. The true North Star for these systems is genuine user value. That's what actually translates to you returning day after day.
Relying on a single metric, like, say, just measuring the time spent on a post, is incredibly easy to game. Plus, it aggressively amplifies sensationalism. To fix this, mature systems combine multiple engagement heads. They explicitly balance positive signals, like a really meaningful comment, with strong negative weights. This creates a deeply nuanced value score that's actually calibrated against real user satisfaction surveys. Because honestly, building a feed that people genuinely want to return to requires some incredibly complex calibration.
Moving right along, Section 2, Blueprint of the Feed.
Okay, now that we know the true goal isn't just cheap clicks, we've got to look at the sheer scale of the engineering challenge here. The numbers are just staggering. The system has to sort through billions of newly created posts for roughly 2 billion daily active users. But the real kicker? It has to finalize the top 50 results for your specific screen in under 200 milliseconds. Engineers actually call this a P99 latency. Basically, that means 99% of the time, the system strictly hits that lightning-fast deadline. It is an absolute masterclass in efficiency and distributed computing.
So let's look at the high-level system architecture. Just follow the path of a user's request. It travels first through a feed aggregator, then into candidate sourcing, where it pulls from graph and AI models. Next, it's pushed into the multitask ranker. And finally, it hits a strict value and integrity filter before the top results actually reach your device. And while all of this is happening online, offline training pipelines are constantly, and I mean constantly, updating the models based on event logs.
Let's move through this funnel step by step to really see how billions of daily posts are aggressively narrowed down before hitting your screen. It goes like this. First, the aggregator grabs your user data. Second, sourcing grabs a broad pool of potential posts. Third, the ranker scores every single one of them. And fourth, the integrity filter acts as the final bouncer at the door.
Which brings us to Section 3, Sourcing and Feature Signals.
Step 2 in our funnel is candidate sourcing. This is how the system decides what raw materials to even consider in the first place. Since it obviously can't evaluate billions of posts in 200 milliseconds, it takes a shortcut. It grabs what's called a graph fanout. Now, that's essentially just a mix of recent posts from your direct friends, but it also uses a very complex AI model, specifically a two-tower neural network, to pull out out-of-network recommendations. This injects fresh, trending topics and groups that you might really like, but just don't explicitly follow yet. Overall, it gathers a few hundred to maybe a couple thousand of these top candidates to pass down the line.
Now here is a truly fascinating insider tip straight from the engineering blueprints. Out of all the complex machine learning signals evaluated, your actual social tie strength is the undeniable powerhouse feature. It's not just about what the content is. It's heavily about who posted it and how frequently and recently you interact with them. If you are constantly messaging or liking your best friend's posts, the system heavily anchors your feed around that real human connection.
But of course, the algorithm combines that tie strength with several other crucial signal groups. It looks at your historical topic affinities, basically what your long-term tastes are. It looks at the age of the post because, news decays incredibly fast. It even looks at contextual data, things like what device you're on, the time of day, and how long your current session is, all to predict shifting behaviors. It weaves all of these temporal, contextual, and social threads together into one big picture.
Moving to Section 4, the multitask ranker. All right, once we've sourced our few hundred highly relevant candidates, we hand them over to the true brain of the operation. This ranker component is incredibly sophisticated. It's typically a deep neural network, and it is so fascinating because it predicts multiple outcomes simultaneously. For every single post candidate, it's guessing the exact probability that you're going to like it, comment on it, share it, dwell on it, or, and this is critical, hide the post entirely. It's essentially playing out a dozen different futures for every single piece of content, all in parallel.
And here's the really important part. What separates a healthy, mature feed from a toxic engagement trap is explicitly applying strong negative weights. If the ranker predicts a high probability that a post will make you hit hide, report, or see less, it mathematically penalizes that post drastically. It literally subtracts points from the positive predictions to create a final balanced value score. This is what prevents the algorithm from showing you something that might be highly engaging, but ultimately deeply frustrating.
Finally, Section 5, guardrails and system integrity. But listen, even a perfectly scored, highly engaging feed isn't ready for your screen until it passes through the final, most uncompromising stage of them all. In mature systems, system integrity acts as the ultimate gatekeeper. It is what engineers call a first-class constraint. This layer exists entirely to strip out or severely demote hate speech, violent content, spam, and borderline policy-violating posts. It really doesn't matter if a post has the absolute highest engagement value score in the world. If the integrity classifier flags it, it is forcibly removed or buried before you ever even scroll down to it.
And here is exactly how they measure the success of that gatekeeper. Platform engineers hard cap a metric called prevalence. Prevalence is simply the total share of user views that end up being violating content. So if an engineering team builds this shiny new ranking algorithm that skyrockets meaningful engagement by, say, 10%, but it accidentally increases the prevalence of bad content by even a tiny fraction of a percent, that launch is universally blocked. No exceptions. Integrity always wins the tiebreaker.
So engineers are constantly playing this massive balancing act. Every time the system introduces a new feature, it inherently introduces a risk, which then requires a structural counterweight. For instance, if optimizing for positive clicks causes engagement bait, they introduce negative heads. If viral exploration starts spreading misinformation, they strictly integrity gate it. And if giving you exactly what you want creates a super narrow filter bubble, they intentionally inject fresh, out-of-network recommendations just to expand your horizons. And because the social ecosystem is just incredibly dynamic, trends emerge, bots adapt, real-world events happen constantly. The system relies heavily on continuous monitoring. This quality assurance pipeline is constantly watching for sudden spikes in user reports or privacy breaches. If a newly deployed model starts causing a sudden surge in negative feedback, this QA system kicks in and automatically rolls the algorithm back to a safer previous version.
So we've unpacked the whole journey, right from that 200 millisecond starting gun all the way down to the final integrity filters. Understanding that this incredibly complex architecture relies heavily on your explicit positive and negative feedback, that actually gives you immense power. It means you aren't just passively consuming. Your clicks, your dwells, your hide post taps, they are actively rewriting the code of your own digital world. Knowing that, how will you consciously train your algorithm the next time you open the app? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I really hope it completely shifts how you view your feed.